This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning. It's perfect. Good morning, everybody. First of all, we'll learn from my wife, Miriam. We'll learn the Refuah Shalema from my Rebbetzin, Miriam Liba Bas Devora. Somebody comes to stay with her special that I should be able to be here with you now. When learning Parshas Noach, when you were in elementary school, when you were in high school, I am sure you never heard this observation. But now that you're getting ready for life, you're getting ready to set up a home and succeed at the business of life, let me point out a tremendously important lesson about the generation of the flood that was destroyed completely. It was a generation that was mushchas, that was considered by Hashem to be destructive. It was chamas, it was corruption. So if I would ask you, what you think the common denominator between the completely corrupt generation of the flood, the completely sinful land of Sodom v'Amorah, and the immoral land of Egypt, what would you say is the common denominator of those three places? Because therein lies a great life lesson. The generation of the flood, Sodom and Amorah and Mitzrayim had the good life. Everything was great. The generation of flood it was living by the Riviera. It was living in one of the islands where the weather is always perfect. They only had to plant once in 40 years. They had no headaches. There were no migraines. They lived to almost 1,000 years old. It was a good life. What about Sodom and Amorah? Kigan Hashem, like the Garden of Eden. It says, Sodom and Amorah, they had it all. It was like they were all wealthy. They had a life of luxury and ease. That's what Lot saw when Lot decided. After leaving Avram, he said, let me go there. That's the place. It's Country Club City. Same thing is true of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was called the breadbasket of the world. You know why? Because all other places had to live and die if there was rain. There wasn't trucking and exports and imports. If you didn't have food, you died. Or there was war. And you lived and died whether there was a rainfall. Not in Egypt, because in Egypt was irrigated by the Nile. So that was the place to live. And they had a great life. And what happened? So let's look at these societies. They had it good, and Dar HaMabul became completely corrupt, taking other people's wives. They were immoral. They stole. Sodom and Amorah, we know, was the cruelest society. The stone bed where a guest came and they stretched him out, or they cut off his legs if he didn't fit on the bed. Right? They would give a coin to a beggar that came, but then no shop would sell them food. We don't sell to outsiders, and the people would die. Egypt was a land of promiscuity, immorality, black magic. It was a land that could do all the atrocities to the Jewish people. So what do we learn from this? So there's a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Vayishman Yeshurun vayivat." Yeshurun is the Jewish people. They became fat and they kicked. We have to beware of the good times. Now that's a strange warning. Good times. We all want the good times. But if you're raising a family, especially living in America, you have to know that during bad times, during times where you don't have a lot, your eyes are trained to Hashem. You have the Tillim in your hand, and you're more spiritual. When everything is going good, you're living from vacation to vacation, from cappuccino to the next, from eating out to the next weekend vacation, and your mind is not on Hashem, it's not on spirituality, it's not on davening. As a matter of fact, the Gemara says, "Who's haru mibnei aniyim," be careful of the children of the poor, shemimenu teitzei Torah. From them comes Torah. Why? Because they don't have other distractions. They're poor. So they open up a chumash. You have to know that when things are going good, you don't need to turn to God. You can be preoccupied with the next recipe for a barbecue. So your mind isn't on brachas. Your mind isn't on tefillas. Nothing is pushing you to give tzedakah. We're always warned about this. That's why there's a remarkable medrash. The medrash says that the nisayon of wealth is greater than the nisayon of poverty. I remember there was once a $700 million Powerball. So there was somebody by my Daf Yomi in Borough Park, and before this year he said, "Rabbi Weiss, you always learn for sick people. So could you learn that I should win the Powerball?" So I looked at him and I said, "Do you think for sure that it's a good thing if you would win the Powerball, if you would win $700 million? He says, "Oh, yes, it would be. I'd do so much good with it." So I said to him, "Well, let me tell you, what does it say? Does anybody know what a real poor person is compared to?" Ani chashiv kemeis. Poor person is like a dead man. And if it says that the nisayon of wealth is greater than the nisayon of poverty, so that means that wealth can be worse than death. Do you know that there are statistics that most of the people that win big lotteries, their lives are ruined? There's a very high suicide rate to big lottery winners. Very high suicide rate. A lot of money is not a simple thing. "Well, I had a lot of money. My wife is not good for me anymore. I married her. She's a simple, plain girl. I married her when I had no money. Now I can get somebody much better." Most of the people that win lotteries get divorces. So I told you it's important. You see, this is the way to learn Torah. It's a story, the flood. It's not a story. It's to teach us about life. Always be careful when things are going good, not to lose your spiritual compass. There's nothing forcing you. That's the big nisayon. That's why people are so nice to everybody except to their spouse. Because there's no incentive to be nice to a spouse. You have them already. They're stuck with you. Your friends, if you're not nice, they'll delete you from their, contacts. Your spouse can't delete you from your contacts. We need to be pushed in life. That's why we get a pain in our tooth, because if we wouldn't have a pain, we wouldn't go to the dentist. That's why we get cramps if the food's no good, because if we wouldn't get the cramps, we wouldn't avoid the food. Right? So there are stimuli in life. And when things are all going good, a lot of times we don't have the spiritual stimuli. So you always have to remember, things are going good, I better say Moedim with a lot of kavanah. Like the Chavis Avava says, Dvarim sheroitza lahasmid ba, things that you want to continue, al tiftach ba. Never take them for granted. Don't take good things for granted. You take them for granted, you can lose them. So when things are going good, we should redouble our efforts for tzedakah. Hashem, boy, do I have to be. One of my married daughters said to me this morning that a child bit her son in school. But she said, thank you, Hashem, that he was bitten and he wasn't the biter. What a smart thing. Thank you, Hashem, that my son didn't do the biting. That's a mother whose child got bitten. But instead of saying, Hashem, why did you allow that? She said, thank you, Hashem, I'd rather my son get bitten than I be the one that's responsible for a child that's biting and have that problem. Always remember to be thankful. You go home and you have two parents? Whoa! Are you way ahead of the game? And they're married? And you have a roof over your head? And you don't go to sleep hungry? Does anybody in this room ever know from not having food and going to sleep hungry? Anybody? I met Rav Lichtig from Queens. He saw the Chafetz Chaim twice in his life. He said to me, Rabbi Weiss, you know what the two problems we had when we were growing up? Said the first is we didn't have enough food. He says, I remember going to sleep in the night and not being able to sleep from the hunger pains. We never had that. We might not have liked the supper, or our drink wasn't in the refrigerator, but that's about it. Why do we have to bench with kavanah that Rabbeinu Shalom is on us akal? Next lesson. Listen carefully. There was a tremendous meeting, a historical meeting, between Shem, the son of Noach, and Avram. Famous meeting. This you might have learned about. See, Noach and Avram's life overlapped 58 years. Avram Avinu was 58 when Noach passed away. That's the way the numbers work. But we don't have any record that Avram and Noach ever met. These two great men. We don't have any record. Noach was already very old. There wasn't air travel in those days, but there was a famous meeting between Avram and Shem. Shem had another name. It was called Melchizedek Melech Sholem. So there's a famous meeting between Avram Avinu and Shem. Now we know that Avram Avinu, as we'll learn in next week's parasha, we know that Avram Avinu was a great student who studied everything. Now everybody in those days knew about the miracle of the flood and the boat. The boat was still around on the mountain of Ararat. Everybody knew about the boat. And Avram Avinu asked Shem, he says, I studied the story of the boat, and I can't understand how you survived for a year. All of mankind died. You were in this boat that was hermetically sealed on the inside and outside with pitch. It was tightly sealed like a nuclear submarine. How did you breathe? For a year with all those animals, how did you breathe? And you were stuck inside with the dung of every imaginable animal. I know how a chicken coop smells. That place was a gas chamber with all the smells of animal dung, rotting, elephant dung, hippopotamus dung, chicken dung, dog dung, for a whole year. It was a gas chamber. How did you survive? And Avram Avinu said, and what did you drink? What did you drink? You didn't have access to the water outside, and the water outside wasn't clean. And you didn't have any great reservoir. There was no room for a reservoir, a tank in the boat for all those hours. What did you drink for an entire year? And you didn't have any steering mechanisms. He said, I studied the Torah. It doesn't say that it had any steering mechanism. How did you steer amongst all the debris? I mean, the Titanic hit one glacier. How did you steer the boat? You didn't even have a windshield. How did you steer? You didn't have any oars. You didn't have anything. How did you survive? Avraham Avinu says, it's a shame. Shame to just say, well, it was a miracle. Obviously, it was a miracle. It was a miracle boat. But Shem didn't just say that. Shem said that it was in the merit that my father did around the clock, 24/7, the full year. He fed all the animals. He said some animals had to be fed a whole bunch of times a day. Other animals, like the bat, only ate in the night. Other animals needed the food to be prepared. Yes?
Was it only Noach that went around, or did his family help him?
His family helped him, certainly. It's brought down his family helped him. His family worked hard. But Noach dealt with the dangerous creatures. Like it says, the lion bit him. There were a lot of dangerous creatures. And he had to figure out what each, you have to figure out what every animal likes. You buy a pet hamster, you have to learn what it likes. You read the instructions. Noach didn't have any instructions. He wasn't a zoologist. He became a zoologist. So he said, it was in the merit of my father's kindness that we survived. Now, that's why Avraham Avinu adopted a life of chesed. And that's why the Jewish people, the first father of the Jewish people was chesed. Because Olam chesed yibana. The world was built on chesed. You know that the Torah starts with an act of kindness and ends with an act of kindness. It starts with the act of kindness that Hashem clothed Adam and Chava, and it ends with an act of kindness that Hashem buried Moshe. Since in the beginning and in the end it's a sandwich of kindness, la'amedcha, that the whole Torah is chesed. Torah's chesed al l'shoina. Therefore, we also build a teva. It's called our home. If we want miracles in our home has to be full with chesed. That's a tremendous lesson. We want miracles in our home has to be filled with chesed. Now that's a hashkofas achayim. It's why when Eliezer was looking for a wife for Yitzchak to build Klal Yisrael, ki bi Yitzchak yikari l'chazara, what did he look for? Chesed. That's all. What about integrity? What about tolerance? What about chesed? Jewish home is built on chesed, on kindness. On kindness first to your home. Chesed is not outside. Kindness first to your home. That's why if girls will ask me, what should they work on already? What midah? That they should be able to create a wonderful bias neman, chesed. That's a very important thing. Now here's another quick lesson. Eila told us Noach, ish tzadik tomim es elikim es alech Noach. Noach was known as a mukhtar b'nimus. He was a titled person. You have some people that they're MD, PhD, MCAA. They have a whole alphabet soup. Esquire. They have a whole alphabet soup after their name. They have titles. Noach had a lot of titles. Eila told us, Noach, ish, tzadik, tomim, es alikim es alech Noach. Yeah, he was tomim, he was perfect. He was a tzaddik, he was righteous, he was ish, he was a mensch. He walked with God. He was always aware of doing the will of God. What was Noach's biggest title? Eila told us, Noach. It says it twice. It says the Rosh, one of the Rishonim, Eila told us, Noach, that it was an ish naicha, a gentle person, an easygoing person. Of all his titles, a mensch, a tzaddik, a tomim, and walking with God, the biggest accolade is Noach. He was easygoing, he was gentle. And then, let's look at Noach's Rebbetzin, his wife. What was his wife? Naamah. Says the Medrash, says the Zohar Chodesh, Naamah ni'imim ma'aseha. Her ways were sweet. When Hashem looked to rebuild the world that was better, that wasn't corrupt, that wasn't mushkas, destructive, what did he do? He took a gentle person and a sweet person. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, how do I know if God likes me? How do I know if Hashem, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if the Eibishter likes me? How do I know? I want to know if I'm on the Rebbeinu Shalom's good list. To borrow an expression, not on his naughty list, How do I know I'm on the Rebbeinu Shalom's good list? So it's a Mishnah, there's a barometer, there's a litmus test. Kol sheruach habriyas neichei menu, ruach hamokim neichei menu. If people are at ease with you, it's interesting, it doesn't say that people like you. They're at ease with you, they don't feel like they're on tippy toes. They're at ease with you. You're an easygoing person. Then that's a sure sign that Hashem is pleased with that person. So most of you are 18 or 19? As an 18-year-old girl, there's a very obvious message. You're going to be looking soon for a young man. You want a young man that Hashem likes? You want a young man that's good with Hashem? Find an easygoing young man. You'll have a good life if you find an easygoing person. And you want to create a bayis neman, look for the ingredients that the Rebbeinu Shalom used to create a world, his new world. An ish neicha. A gentle man. Gentleness. Gentleness is so... Now, but remember, the good gentle man is going to be looking for a girl. What should you have? Sweetness. In Eretz Yisrael, there's we call a wife honey. Honey, can you help me with something? Why do we do that? Because honey is sweet. Matuk. That's what they call it. It's matuk. Sweetness. Sweetie. Now it's an expression of endearment, but it's much more than that. It's because that's what's important in a wife, that she should be sweet. A husband is going to have a lot of hardship out there. In business, with people. He has to know that there's sweetness at home. His azer has to be sweet, not acid. You want to make yourself a good azer? You have to work on sweetness, on mesikus. Now, of course, when you absorb Torah helps make you sweet. Because Torah itself, it says, is mesukim midvar v'noifes sufim. It's more sweet than honey, and the sweetest honeycombs. These are very important lessons that we learned today. Number one, 3 lessons we learned today. Number one, to remember and never forget that when times are good, it's a danger of your spirituality being overlooked. Everything's fine. I don't need God. I'll call you when I need you, Hashem. Number 2, remember kindness. Chesed. It's what saved Avram of Noach in the Teva. The power, a house fueled by chesed, kindness, helping each other out, offering, not waiting to be asked, teaching our children to give, to share, that fuels a home, makes miracles. And finally, number 3, when Hashem wanted to rebuild his world, he built it with a man that was first and foremost Noach, gentle, a woman that was sweet. Those are the ingredients to rebuild a good world, not a good world that's mushkas, not a world that's chamas. Very good to see all of you. Have a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.